Get to our political panel with me, the former Liberal advisor David Gazzard, former Labor advisor Darren Barnett. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Darren, it really is a tough spot for the government in terms of economic management. We've seen the GDP number today slowing growth and the rate rises continue. Things are precarious.
They are. It's a delicate balancing act that they are seeking, and a mixture, obviously, of the Reserve Bank and government policy when it comes to IR and other matters. But the balancing act that they are trying to achieve is bringing in the inflation bubble and trying to moderate growth, but without crashing the economy. So it's a difficult act because the instruments are fairly blunt, and we obviously don't have a crystal ball of what the future look like. So what we do know, it's getting tougher to pay the mortgage, therefore consumer spending and discretionary spending has come in, but trying to balance that so that we don't have a shock of the nature where unemployment spikes and other, we have a recession. And it's a difficult balancing act. At the moment, it's on track, but as I say, crystal ball, no one quite knows what the future holds.
David, the RBA governor warning that the minimum wage increase in and of itself last week can be managed with appropriate productivity gains across the board. Wage rises are acceptable, but the productivity gains haven't been forthcoming. I asked the Treasurer about it earlier in the program. He says he takes a different view, that he believes that we need to be careful not to blame workers for expecting wage rises after a long period of wage stagnation.
Well, I don't really see how anyone's blaming workers in the first instance. It's not the workers' fault, and you can understand workers wanting a pay increase, particularly when they're struggling with the cost of living and interest rates continuing to rise. The big thing that this part of the cycle has had, which has been different from other cycles, is that unemployment has stayed relatively low. And with wage rises increasing to the point where business owners with discretionary spending coming down, it is highly likely that unemployment will start to rise. And this is where you'll start getting a real problem, because at that stage, people start foreclosing on the banks start foreclosing on mortgages because people don't have jobs to pay for them. And it feeds into a higher unemployment bill for the government, higher social services bill for the government, and more spending on unemployment. So it's a spiral, a dizzying spiral that starts and heads down. So I don't think anyone's in the middle of that is blaming the workers. They're sort of looking for a lead on deflationary policies. If you can manage the unemployment, or if you can manage the minimum wage rise, fine. The budget didn't add to inflation, but it certainly wasn't deflationary. But now you have the spectre of a looming patent bargaining display with new IR laws that are potentially coming in as part of a second wave of IR reform. So it is a very, very delicate time. I agree with Darren on that, and there's a lot before the government to consider.
Darren, there is a clear difference in this message from the RBA governor on the one hand, as I mentioned to David, suggesting that wages are a risk factor if they spread across the board in the labour market right now. Jim Chalmers says, don't blame the workers. Is this where the politics butts up against the economics?
Well, it's a difficult argument to say to workers that if you get a pay rise that you think you deserve, particularly after a long period of wage stagnation, that rates are going to continue to go up and it'll disappear on the other hand. So threading the eye of the needle, not only in terms of sort of rhetoric and commentary, but also in terms of reality, that's the difficult challenge that we face. And I think obviously you will see some departure between what is said by the Reserve Bank and what is said by the Treasurer, and they're speaking to slightly different audiences. But I do agree with David 100%. And no one's blaming workers here. Wanting a little bit more in your pocket after difficult times is an entirely reasonable thing that you would want at the end of your working week.
But I guess part of it is expectation management right now, David, given how red hot inflation is running in our economy and how big the moves are in terms of the interest rate rises, with more more set to come, more than likely.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it all comes back, Kieran, to inflation. This is the bogey. And this is the difference in politics at the moment. The Liberal Party is saying the government, has hands on the lever to actually decrease inflation, and you would do that by cutting spending. And the budget was probably neutral on fiscal policy. Everyone seems to agree, but it certainly wasn't deflationary. So at the end of the day, the RBA governor has a very, very blunt tool, and that's interest rates. It is designed to slow the economy. It is designed to take the heat out of the economy. It's designed to do everything that Phil Lowe has said. That is exactly what it's going to do. The government can't blame the RBA here. The government it's given the RBA a mandate to keep inflation between 2% and 3%. If it wants to do something that helps workers, it could change the band to 4 or 5%. So Phil Lowe could ease monetary policy, but they're not doing that, obviously, because they want to curb inflation. But this is what the coalition keeps saying to the government. It's up to you to set the standard around cutting spending, so we don't have structural problems in the budget. We don't have excessive spending going into the economy while we have wage increases.